I come to you now 8 years after starting Reddit with Steve, after helping launch Hipmunk and Breadpig. You're seeing the product of a lot of failures. You're seeing the product of a lot of learning opportunities that no one saw. They were not public, right? When you're still working your way up, when you're still fresh out of college, and you still haven't shared your big idea with the world, you can fail hundreds of times, and no one will care because you're gonna have to try really hard just to get people to care about what you're doing, let alone caring about your failures. And back then, I didn't know what I was doing, and I would argue today, I still don't really know what I'm doing. Yes, experience helps, and there are problems that I encounter now that I feel like I'm better equipped to solve, but none of us ever really figures it out. Whenever I hear someone talking as though they're some kind of expert who actually knows everything about what they're doing, they are lying, or they're delusional, or maybe they're just not trying hard enough. Because if you always find yourself in situations where you feel 100% secure, safe, whatever, you're probably not doing anything terribly interesting. And as I clearly love mascots and cute creatures, it should not surprise you that a dog from Adventure Time is the basis for this thesis, which goes something along the lines of, dude, sucking is the first step to being sort of good at something. And it's true. Sucking really is the first step to being sort of good. So let go of the fact you don't know what you're doing. That's okay, because you're going to have to hack it all along the way. Now, there are some disadvantages that we can get all sort of art of war on and turn into strengths. And I'll use a perfect example from Hipmunk that involves our CEO, Adam Goldstein. Now, Adam was a fresh college graduate right out of MIT. I must have said MIT whiz kid like 1,000 times whenever talking to the press. Like, this guy was a fresh-faced kid who had no business taking meetings with major OTAs. Those are online travel agencies. But when we were getting ready to launch Hipmunk in the 3 months or so of Y Combinator, it was on Adam's shoulders to sign a deal with someone, because travel search website isn't terribly helpful if you search for flights and don't get any results. Now, we could have scraped them, we could have hacked, but we wanted to have an actual client so that we could actually, unlike Reddit, make money from the day we launched. And so it was on Adam to figure that out. Now, here is where he used that strength to his advantage, that weakness to his advantage. You see, on the phone or over email, Adam sounds like he could be 30, 35. He's a smart dude. He is articulate. He looks a lot younger, but he sounds a lot older, and so he used this to advantage. He would schedule meetings. He would try to get in the door with decision makers at airlines, at these online travel agencies, via phone, via email. He would fly himself to Chicago to just be in town with just an hour free for coffee, all perception here, to meet with one of these executives until finally he was able to do it. And when they met him, they looked at him and saw a kid who looked like he just graduated from college and said, damn, this kid is smart. This kid is smart, because when we were talking all those times before, I assumed you were older, and voila, he can turn this possible weakness, right? A 22-year-old shows up talking to some mid to high-level executive and turn it into a strength. And this is stuff that I see happening. You know, I'm very lucky. I was in the first round of Y Combinator, and I see firsthand how much the world is changing. I know Tom Friedman wrote a book about this, and he is wrong. The world is not flat. NASA has proven it. We knew that a little sooner, or a little earlier than that. But the point is, the World Wide Web the internet is the greatest stage and the greatest library we have, and it's ever growing, and it's becoming even more fruitful to allow awesome people with great ideas who have the access and the ability to share them with the world. And that's awesome. That's really awesome, because traditionally there were gatekeepers. Traditionally, there were people who decided what succeeded and what didn't, and slowly but surely that is transitioning to a time of great power for the people who are actually the makers, for the people who are actually the doers, whether they want to start companies, whether they want to start films, whether they want to write novels, whether they want to start cool Tumblr blogs with photos of Hillary Clinton texting people with cool captions. They can just do that and create ideas that spread far and wide. And what's so wild is when we started Reddit in 2005, social media was not a phrase. Don't blame me for that, all right? I was not consulted on whether or not that would become a thing, but anyway, Facebook was still in colleges. There was no Twitter, there was no Tumblr, there was no Pinterest, there was no et cetera, et cetera. But in 5 years, 2010, when we launched Reddit, social media was alive and well, and I've seen firsthand what this does. Literally every day, there is some other story of some other person who's been able to find an audience, not only for her iOS app, but for her art project, for her film. There are so many more platforms, so many of which I know you guys are all aware of, but let's talk about getting that traction. Let's talk about being heard. Now, It's always dangerous to reference Bane, but I'm going for it, all right? And I'm not going to do the voice, although I love doing the voice. Girlfriend does not like it so much. But the point is, there are a lot of incumbents today who are starting to realize, or hopefully they realize how much the internet is changing the game, right? Software is eating the world, as Mark Andreessen said. But we have an inherent advantage, and by we, I mean the people who have been on this internet for a very long time, some would argue perhaps too long. The fact that they did merely adopt it. We were born in it and molded by it and understand it fundamentally in a way that people understand language in a fundamental way differently when they're raised in a country that speaks it and a culture that has it than one that is learning it remotely and trying to adapt. And I know there are, and I'm speaking directly to millennials here, some of whom may have looming student loan debt because of a promise that was slightly half-baked, to say the least. We do have an advantage here, and it may not always seem like it, but this is usually how we react to the incumbents, the mainstream. That is a classic Picard facepalm. For those of you in the back, please take note, all right? This is usually the reaction that most of us feel when we see a lot of these incumbents trying to do the things that they know they probably should be doing but fail at, but can't because they are not native to it. And we all want to disrupt all the industries, and that's great, and we should, and there is going to be a lot of change, but like I said from the start, I don't actually know what's going to happen. We could see these trends. We could see 4 years ago that Kickstarter was going to change the way creative projects got funded. When they were sending percentage points worth of documentaries to Sundance, we saw maybe there's something here. We didn't know Veronica Mars would raise $5 million to bring a show back, but we knew there was something happening there. There were plenty of people who said, oh, there'll never be a director worth their salt who would ever, that's how they talked, who would ever, like old prospectors, who would ever use Kickstarter. And where were they when Spike raised $1 million? And he's a Knicks fan, but I'm gonna let it slide. The fact is, we don't know where it is headed, but the trajectory is clear. And for most of you in the audience, it looks pretty good, all right? Now, this is what the two of us, this is what Steve and I looked like when we moved to Medford, Massachusetts to start Reddit, all right? That is a Cafe Press Reddit shirt. I'm rocking my UVA hat. Steve looks about a day over 12. Gosh, and he's still got it. Still got that young man swag. So here's the thing. This was the first photo taken of us, and we, if you don't know, as I mentioned earlier, we had no idea what we were doing. We had no business. Y Combinator did not even know what it was doing because it was the first to really think, hey, we could give $6,000 or $7,000 per founder for 2 or 3 people to basically live like college students for 3 months, work their butts off, and then present something at the end of the demo day. They didn't know, but they knew there were signs. And what is so clear to me is that we still haven't really figured it all out. This, speaking to Catherine's point earlier, all right, this is clearly not perfect. This is not perfect. This is, though, and I'm ashamed to show it up in front of people, but here it is. This is the first version of Reddit we ever put online. We got started, and did I mention we were in Massachusetts? We were not in Silicon Valley. We got started in June of 2005, and 3 weeks later, we got an email from Paul Graham, and this was back when YC was like, I think there were 12 companies in the batch. Like, Paul would actually take the time out almost every other day to email us and usually send us honest criticism. On this particular day, he sent an email just to Steve. So you see, Steve was the technical founder. I was the non-technical founder. He built the website. I drew the logo and ordered the takeout. It was, I mean, other things too, but let's be real. We were thinking, all right, we're making good progress. Everything's going great. And so we got this email from Paul, and he says, you guys haven't launched yet. Remember, it's been 3 weeks since we showed up at Y Combinator. You haven't launched yet. It's either one of two things. Either you're waiting too long for it to be perfect, in which case you're hosed, or you're incompetent, in which case you are also hosed. And this was exactly the kick in the butt that we needed. We needed someone to actually say, launch. Remember, 2005. There was no Quora thread. There were no epic blog posts from brilliant VCs and investors sharing their wisdom like, 05, resources online were not aplenty. But we had Paul, and we were lucky because he said, launch. And he may have insulted us slightly by saying we were either incompetent or trying too hard to be perfect. Clearly, we were not trying too hard to be perfect, but within 24 hours, we put this thing online. And let me tell you, that was a big deal because until that point, we had never done a public web development project. The only web development Steve had ever done at that point was for his senior thesis, and I had just been making static websites for nonprofits and my Quake 2 clan. So neither one of us had actually created something that had functionality that we expected the world to use, and we were terrified. Little did we know, no one would care. Only our parents would be willing to check it out and try it. And you'll see this was the first version. The first submission was the Downing Street memo, which is some interesting foreshadowing in light of the NSA revelations, that I submitted. You'll notice I have -1 karma because Steve is a jerk and he downvoted me. Yeah, but this is it, very rudimentary. We didn't even have upvotes, downvotes. It was just these weird hotness bars where you do it based on clicks. Anyway, we got through iterations over the coming weeks. We were pushing new code almost every day because we had a single-minded focus on writing code, launching, writing code, and launching until finally we started to get some traction. But this was the moment. This was the moment years later. Now, real quick, this is at a Dig Nation event here in New York. This was in 2009. This was the moment when I realized we were probably going to be onto something, all right? Now, for years, and I can tell you with a hand over my heart, I was telling this, and I have the email, I looked it up. I've been trying to explain to people how we were different from Dig. And I remember that day, that was Dig founder Kevin Rose, by the way. I had to brace myself because this was a week or so after we got that janky site online. And I heard about Dig. I saw it, I think it was a TechCrunch post or somewhere, and Steve and I were having a little chat there sitting across from each other, and we emailed Paul, and we're just like, hey, so we got some competition, didn't really know about them, sorry for not doing the competitive landscape analysis. And that was my job. It was to carry out competitive landscape analysis and logo. And I got 2 out of 3, but clearly not good enough. This ended up being a huge boon for us, though, because we had ignorance on our side. Like I said, we didn't know what we were doing. And when the army of Dig clones, and back then you'll have to remember, there were like 6 competitors all just basically replicating Dig's functionality. They were all replicating the clear market leader. We went in blind because we didn't know they existed. We were familiar with Slashdot and Delicious, and we just figured this is our way to have rising and falling links that get voted on. Now, Paul sent us a very important email because we said, look, they got funding, they have this tech celebrity founder, they're in the Bay Area. Like, we're just chilling here in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I'm a little worried. And he said, don't worry about your competition. Your competition will never defeat you. They will never defeat you. And I'll tell you, he was so prescient in this regard. In the hundreds of Y Combinator companies that we have seen go through, and I'm an advisor to a lot of them, only one was actually defeated by an incumbent, and that was Kiko, which was in our batch. It was a wonderful Ajax calendar, which at the time was really novel, and then Google Calendar came out like a week later and crushed it because, of course, all those Gmail users became Google Calendar users. That was the only time we've seen an incumbent actually defeat a startup. If someone is going to be drinking your milkshake, it's going to be another upstart. And that's why it's so important to not give a damn about your competition. When your competition gets, when your competition's shirt is thrown on stage, don't care about it. Don't worry about it. It's not worth your time. And yet, we labored on until the day, this was like a month ago, when Ad Age was feeling rather generous and called us the mainstream media. Now, let me point something out here. And I'm on the board of Reddit today, and Yishan is our CEO out in the Bay. We've got an office here in New York, though. One of the things that I impress upon every single founder in this quest for traction, in this quest for getting users, Catherine mentioned this a little earlier, do not start a startup for TechCrunch, or you can fill in the blank with whatever your favorite tech blog is. Back in the day, 2005, probably 6, 7, a little ways through, TechCrunch was the thing. That was the moment that every startup dreamed of when you were finally launched. It was like some debutante ball, right? And your startup had picked out a perfect dress, and you were ready to show it off to the world. I don't actually know what a debutante ball is. I really should have Googled that before using that reference, but the point is that was the obsession, and whenever I see a founder questing for that, it is a fool's errand. Because I'll tell you, you know how many times Reddit was on the front page of Dig for the duration of our startup? 0. Literally, never once were we covered in TechCrunch until the day we got acquired, and then Mike Arrington breathlessly calls and is like, oh, I can't believe I didn't hear about this. I need to have an interview. It's like, all right, well, 18 months later, you found it. Fun fact, the first publication to actually write about Reddit that wasn't just a random person's blog was The Guardian, and that was 6 months after we launched. So a British newspaper was the first publication to write about the 2 dudes in the apartment starting this thing called Reddit. So props to The Guardian, very forward-thinking publication. And, and the mind job for us was as we looked around and thought, all right, where are we going to find this traction early on? We basically looked for any blog, the most random typepad or WordPress blog that would even write anything about Reddit, and I would twist Steve's arm, show up on that blog and leave a couple of comments. And I actually found the first blog that ever wrote a post about Reddit. It was called The Changing Way, thanks to the Wayback Machine. And I found this dude, I think John was his name, his post. And he was like, hey, I found this site called Reddit. It's kind of interesting. And there's Steve and I commenting, saying, thanks so much. Let us know what you think. If you ever hate it, just tell us, email away. In those early days, the only way we could find out about our users and make them care and show that we cared was either on our site, of course it took a little while to get them, or showing up on random blogs, right? Fast forward to 2010, and all of a sudden, as soon as we launch Hipmunk, there are tweets. There are even Google Plus posts, I think. Was Google Plus a thing? I don't know. I just like bringing up Google Plus. It's not like Google pays me. I just kind of, I want it. So it's like a little engine that could. But the fact is, there are so many more mechanisms now to look at any opportunity to get those first 100 or 4,000 people on board. And why am I yelling? Because the way most people think about social media, even to this day, is that it is a traditional way for someone to just get on a soapbox and talk about themselves. This is, whether it's your Twitter account or your Facebook account or your Pinterest account. And look, yes, it is an opportunity for that. But there are so many other richer ways to use this experience that actually look just like real life. The litmus test, the thing that I tell everyone from the aspiring founder to the Fortune 50 CEO is treat the internet like you would real life. Use it just like you would, talk just like you would as a human in real life. This happens all the time, that for some reason, as soon as we go on the internet, we stop thinking like humans. And yet these are the very interactions, those first 100 users, those first 1,000 users to try out whatever it is you're doing are magical because they're trying out some brand new service with a silly name, probably a few misspellings, and they're actually willing to hear from you. They want to hear from you because it actually feels amazing to get a note from a co-founder. It doesn't matter if you're a company of 2. It's amazing. When was the last time you got that? It never happens. And what's so cool is everyone wants to know, how do I do well on Reddit? Well, the secret is just like you do well in life. Just be human. Add value. Don't show up to a cocktail party screaming, yo, check out my stuff. I got this great thing. You'll love it. Who does that? Assholes do that. And yet, the same people go on the internet expecting to do the same thing and yet somehow expect different results. And I want to tell a great story about a dude that really encapsulates a lot of the things that I love about the promise of the internet. And it was a gentleman named Prufrock451. Now, what you don't know about Prufrock, James is his Christian name. Prufrock was a technical writer in Des Moines, Iowa. Now, I've had the privilege of visiting Iowa on an Internet 2012 bus tour we did last year. Lovely, lovely state. Determines the fate of the country every 4 years, give or take. But not a burgeoning tech hub. Actually, Dwala's done an amazing job there. But here's a guy whose full-time job was writing technical manuals. And he saw this thread, and it was an interesting thread. Could I destroy the entire Roman Empire during the reign of Augustus if I traveled back in time with a modern US Marine Infantry Battalion, or MEU? It's an interesting theoretical question, right? You have modern weaponry, but you have the limits of ammo and fuel versus the Romans, who surely have the numbers, but not the technology. So this guy happened to be a bit of a history buff, and he started commenting. He started doing a little bit of storytelling. And this little bit of storytelling that was just in the comments of a Reddit thread, 2 days later, got him an agent in Hollywood. And a couple of weeks later, got him a movie deal with Warner Brothers. You can Google this. It is actually, they're going through another stage of rewrites, but there's a chance that Rome, Sweet Rome will actually be coming to theaters. And it all started because of some random person who showed up. Imagine that cocktail party. Imagine a handful of people all saying, yo, I wonder what would happen. They're stoners at this cocktail party. I wonder what would happen if the entire Roman Empire, during the reign of Augustus, he probably would have been like under Caesar, and the other guy would be like, no, Augustus, man. And we're like, okay. If they were learned, they were classics majors. I mean, that probably explains the weed usage. And here's someone showed up and said, actually, I have a hunch of what might happen, and he started storytelling. Like, this is really cool. This was a person whose entire identity was Prufrock451. And now, the first question we got from every single reporter was, what is Reddit going to do? How much money can you extract from this person for having left this comment using your platform? And we kind of cackled, and we said, all of it. We'll own everything and crush him under our heel. No, that's not. I mean, if we were the entertainment industry, probably. But instead, Instead, we said, no, this is a platform. It's a platform just like Twitter, just like Facebook, just like all these others. This content belongs to Proofrock, and if Mr. Proofrock wants to have a screenplay out of it, you know what? Great, let him. This benefits us because it shows that this is a place where people want to go and share their ideas and use this platform. It is a long-term benefit. And it's making these decisions, the short-term versus the long-term, that every founder needs to make. Now, one of the things that not enough founders do, and this is a random screen grab from Lifehacker, but you'll see where this goes, okay? Not enough founders realize that they are experts. Now, I know, we're all still trying to figure this shit out. We all don't know what we're doing. Yes, but if you are a founder working on a particular niche, and I don't care what it is, whatever you're building, you probably know more about that industry and that space than like 99% of people, just by virtue that you've been paying so much attention to it. And I talk to founders all the time, and this is whether they're in YC or not, who don't yet realize that we are all now essentially content generators. We all now have to be responsible for creating valuable content. In a way, whether your startup's about finding a good flight, or whether your startup's about finding the perfect apartment, like you need to be creating content almost like any other media company would have. And because you are experts, you can use that. And so enter two bright graduates, I think MIT, when they started a company called RentHop, all right? And they are total quants. They actually wanted to understand the apartment rental search business better than anyone else, so they actually got jobs as brokers, which is another thing that makes an investor's heart grow like 6 sizes, right? You want to disrupt the blank industry? Have you worked in it? What background do you have in it? You want to destroy food service? Great, get a job as a waiter. You wanted to change the way people find apartment search listings? Great, get a job as a broker. And so he takes this expertise, takes this knowledge, and they sit on tons of data, all kinds of stuff that they actually don't realize is valuable. Chances are, whatever it is you're working on, you are aware of things that the rest of the market doesn't know. That is valuable content. And then, as actually Catherine mentioned earlier, you can go to these publications. You can go to, whether it's Lifehacker or any of the others, they all want traffic, and they're looking for great original content, and say, hey, guess what? I can tell you the optimal time to search for a New York apartment rental listing. It's 9 o'clock, by the way, 9 o'clock in the morning, Eastern. Because that's when all the brokers start uploading the new data, and you get the best pick of the listings. Now, these are little things. These are little nuggets that when they're explained, the founder is like, oh yeah, well, obviously, everyone knows that. And it's like, no, everyone does not know that. And chances are there are things in your industry that you know that other people don't, that you can turn into content. That is valuable. YC's motto is make something people want. Think of that application to everything that you do, whether it is a blog post, whether it's an infographic, because Lord knows we love infographics. Make sure that that content stands on its own, because the back button is the enemy. Thank you, Paul Graham. And because there are so many cat photos. That's why we built Reddit, is to give you competition for people's attention in the form of cat photos. All right, so be better than cat photos. And I know email is still useful. It is, because you can still see the conversions. And even after Groupon made me hate my inbox for 1.5 years, email still converts, but it converts when it is valuable. And there's an amazing science to it all. And all this stuff is off the shelf. All this stuff is available right now by simply going to a site. One of the clever hacks of the last year for us at Hipmunk to build a newsletter was simply by offering a product called Fare Alerts. We knew that if people were searching for a flight from New York to Orlando, maybe for whatever reason they really want to go to Disney, right? Maybe it wasn't time to buy at that moment, but it turned out lots of people wanted to know when that flight was desirable at some later date. So we signed them up, obviously opt in, to Fare Alerts. And with that, we build a relationship to them with building stuff they actually want. And this makes me really happy. Happy as this cat, in fact. Of course I was going to have a cat in the talk. Like, how could I not? Because for so long, we have been sort of at the mercy of whatever that top-down setup was for creating content, for creating great ideas. And for so long, we were suffering because we didn't actually get an opportunity to benefit from all of the great minds that are out there. We still aren't there yet. But what makes me so happy, what makes me feel like this cat, is as this transition happens, as this all changes, we're going to start to see better ideas from better people bubbling up. I mean, presumably some of you in this audience right now have things that you're working on that you've been meaning to do. And what's going to make me happiest is actually if every one of you challenge yourself, just to knock off one thing, that one top list thing that you're going to do first thing when you wake up tomorrow morning. Because I know, we have so much stuff we need to get done. We have errands, we have life, we have relationships, we have cats, we have lots of things that take priority. But just knock off that one thing, enjoy that endorphin rush, and then figure out that next thing for that next day. The absolute #1 thing you must do. Jerry Seinfeld I believe, uses a giant calendar, a massive wall calendar. I think he knocks off 3 things every day that he absolutely needs to do. You've heard varieties of this thing plenty of times, but it really comes down to something as simple as that, right? It comes down to something as simple as raising your hand when some random person on stage is like, hey, does anyone want to come up here and pitch their thing, right? That's what it comes down to. Because I'm counting on this. I'm betting on this because, frankly, for too long, we have missed out on people with amazing ideas not being able to bring them to the fore. And it's because of stupid things that these great ideas have never had scale. And so every time I meet another person, whether it's Proofrock, or whether it's a couple of people who opened up Etsy stores together online and have now been so successful online that they've founded an offline store in Meat Space in downtown St. Louis. That's Scarlett Garnett, by the way. These 2 women met each other on Etsy, liked each other's stores, and now there's a storefront selling their jewelry and being part of revitalization in downtown St. Louis. Now, let's think about that for a second. Those 2 women would have been, for years, they would have been the best people to get Christmas gifts from, right? They would have been amazing. It would have been like, oh, it's so great, because your jewelry is so wonderful. I'm sure someone would have said, oh, you guys have to get this out there, build a website, I don't know, go to a craft fair. And there always would have been reasons why that was difficult. They maybe would have taken their talents to the masses if they had gotten just lucky enough and the timing had just been right. But now, for the cost of nothing, for the cost of time and some HD photos, they can start a storefront. And how do they build awareness for the storefront? Well, the old-fashioned way. They start bugging their friends and their family, and they start being active on social. I mean, these tutorials, by the way, the in the weeds stuff, are all there. They're all freely available. They're a Google search away. And they weren't even there in 2005. So in a lot of ways, especially when I see undergrads, I get really jealous, extremely jealous, because not only do they have so many more resources that are available that simply weren't to us when we were getting started, but they also have so many more platforms that are available, not just social media, but also all of these others that are allowing people to share their talents. I mean, even Behance was not around when we got started, which could be the reason why Reddit is so ugly. We'll never know. We will never know. But the fact is, you should be a little bit embarrassed by whatever it is you're launching, because you need to get over that. Get over it, because you're going to have to work so incredibly hard to get people to care. Do not let that concern hold you back. All right? And I still, really, still, no idea. I'm just getting better at problem solving with things that are familiar, and I'm benefiting from some experience, but at the end of the day, still have no idea. We're all still figuring this out. And what's so cool is that we don't actually know where this is all going. In a lot of cases, it is on us to determine where this heads. Does this internet head to a more open place where more ideas get to surface, where more people get to come online and we get to benefit from their genius and from their talents and from their hard work? I hope so. I'm counting on it just because I want better stuff, right? I want better jewelry. I want better art. I want better movies. God, I want better movies. I want better startups. I want better design. All of these things. And they're all probably going to be done by people right here. So please, 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 go do amazing stuff. And I've got plenty of this stuff. Plenty of the In the Weeds stuff is online. Take a look. I actually just posted some stuff on 4-Hour Workweek if you guys are Tim Ferriss fans. It's all there. Take a look. And remember, all right? When you go off to do amazing things and are incredibly successful, please tweet at me. Let me know so that I can take all the credit for it. Really. Thank you very much.